Hello and welcome to another episode of Building Minnesota RØKKR. I'm Ashley, aka Midnight, the director of content here for the team. Here, as always, with Brett Diamond, the COO, and today our guest is Arda Öcal. Arda is a well-renowned host. You do interviews, work for ESPN Esports. You have a really interesting history that I'm excited to talk with you about, and today we'll just be chopping it up about esports, the happenings in the esports land. First of all, I just wanted to be selfish and just say hello. I missed you guys last week while I was on vacation. Brett held it down as he's had to do a couple times if I'm not on the podcast. You did a great job, Brett, and I watched with a lot of FOMO while I watched you and Annie talk with Aaron, Ashley, Simon, and obviously the coaches. So I missed you guys.
We definitely missed you too, Ashley. I'm sure all the fans did as well.
Hey, I hope so. I hope they're not like, gosh, he's back. Ew. But no, it's great to sit down with you, Arda. I know we just spoke yesterday. Actually, you just interviewed me yesterday, and
I've missed you too, Midnight. It's been way too long in the last 24 hours.
It has been 23 hours since we've talked, and I missed you a ton. But I was on ESPN Esports Twitch with Arda yesterday talking about our huge event today, the Women of the Arena, $10,000 presented by Crocs, Women of the Arena tournament. It's the part 3. It's the third installment. I've played in one of these Warzone tournaments before, the Women of the Arena, and definitely saw a really great opportunity to have Minnesota RØKKR, our team, get involved in helping host this alongside eFuse and ESPN Esports. And shout out to Crocs for presenting the event. I got sent Crocs, and honestly, let's be honest here. I was never a big fan of Crocs before. I've had some interesting history with a Crocs salesman in the past at the mall when I was like 16. There's a whole history there with me and this being mad at this Crocs guy. He didn't do anything horrible. I didn't like him as a person. It wasn't Crocs. It was him. But he just like represented that to me for the longest time.
He ruined Crocs for you.
Yes,
at the time.
Until now, I have Crocs and I put them in sports mode while I was playing and warming up for the tournament that's going on today. The other day, and I was hitting my shots. I don't know. Maybe it was the Crocs. Maybe it was me. But either way, I'm pretty stoked. Arda, I kind of wanted to just get right into it with you. I know you have a large history here in esports and just hosting different events. I actually think the first time I met you was at the Mall of America, where we were, I think, Brett, you were there. Me and Tiny, I think, went to go promote the launch event that was going to be happening in January. I think, God, that was before the pandemic, man. That was when,
I know. Do you remember events?
Right?
You know what's funny? Even talking about that event, the RØKKR's inaugural weekend feels like 10 years ago right now, doesn't it? It feels like really so long ago. It wasn't even a year ago, but it feels like it's so... Yeah, that event was great. So one of the other things that I do is I'm actually the voice of the NHL Gaming World Championship. So every year the NHL officially puts on their esport tournament. More of a tournament format than what you would be familiar with NBA 2K League and things like that, for example. So I'm their play-by-play commentator. And so teams around the league, including the Minnesota Wild this past year, put on their own tournaments. And the Minnesota Wild had the creative idea of putting their finals at the Mall of America right at the atrium.
That was sick.
And yeah, no, it was a great setup. They actually had one of the more creative setups among any team that I had participated with that year. And so Midnight and Tiny were there from the RØKKR, and we brought them on stage and talked about the upcoming inaugural weekend at the Armory and talking about CDL and what to expect, etc. And there was a crowd on hand. It was a lot of fun. That was a good vibe.
Yeah, that's funny. My introduction to esports as well was actually in that exact spot when I was with the Vikings. I oversaw their Med initiative. That was kind of my toe dip in the water of esports to get started. And we basically did exactly what that event was. We actually kind of created that template for using that space for an esports event. But yeah, that's an awesome environment. You get all the people looking down and cheering. That's a lot of fun. I got to say, that was probably the video game that I played the most between late high school and early college were those NHL games of the late 90s.
Which version were you? Did you play 94? Was that your jam?
Yeah, I played a lot of 94. I would do like an every other year thing. So I would buy the game, I was the even year. So I did 94, 96, 98. And then I like 99, I think I took a break and did PlayStation for a couple of years. And then early 2000s, I played it a lot, like right out of college. I'd always start with like, I'd get the new game and I'd start with like the worst team in the league on the hardest difficulty setting.
Dang, you were going hard.
I'd go like, I dig myself like an 0-15 hole. And then once I got good, I'd have to like get, scramble back to make the playoffs. So it was always my way of having some fun with it. But
that's wild.
How did you get involved with that originally, Arda, in the NHL?
Well, I guess, yeah, to even generalize it and back to Midnight's question about my background, like I started in sports. Well, actually, even before that, I did what most broadcasters do, and I got a degree in math. Which really helps you on camera. So I was a desk job guy for many years, but nights and weekends I'd spend it, and you wouldn't do this now because they don't really exist. That's showing you how boomer I am. There was like a public access channel, Wayne's World style, where I would just go to the public access channel instead of partying on the weekends and just learn everything about broadcasting because I really didn't know. Like in university, I did the college radio station and did the college paper and things like that, but I always saw it as a hobby. I didn't even think it would be a job. So while I was doing the desk job, I went there nights and weekends, and I just caught the bug, really. And then when I was around 27, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to give myself 3 years. I'd save my money a little bit, so at least I have a cushion. I can live okay, like not lavishly, obviously, but scrape by. But I want to pursue this. So I said, okay, I'm going to quit. I'm going to start this fresh. I'm going to give myself 3 years. If I have a sustainable wage and I can, keep myself afloat when I'm 30, then I'm going to continue pursuing it. And luckily it worked out. So had a lot of things to do along the way, including esports. But back when I started, esports wasn't even a thing. It wasn't even a job. Esports casting especially. Maybe there were competitive video game tournaments like, the Nintendo World Championships, but those were marketing gimmicks, right? Like now it's a whole ecosystem, as we all know. But even back then, esports casting, that wasn't a job. That wasn't a category that you could pursue, It was always sports or lifestyle or hosting a talk show or being a hockey commentator, things like that.
I empathize with that a lot. I think it's it's important to have that steady like you going and getting your degree and doing your day job and just kind of like pursuing your passion on the side. But there does hopefully, and most people are hopeful for this, come that point where you're like, okay, like should I put more eggs in this basket? Should I try to go all out? And I just think and I think a lot of people can think along these lines as well. Like I empathize a ton with that just thought to go, okay, let's do it. I think that's really important for more people to dive into what they're passionate about, and it's truly telling that it was passionate, right? Because was passion that landed you here, because there was nothing, right? And when I started too, like 10 years ago, like there was no way you could make money from just uploading COD videos to YouTube or talking about them. And just seeing how much it's grown in the last 10 years makes me so excited for the next 10 years of esports. Because now, and I want to know your guys' thoughts on this, like it's kind of been this slow, like chunk up to more, established leagues, established careers within the space. There's a lot of investor money and investment groups coming in, adding infrastructure, which we see like literally behind Brett Diamond right there, like and Brett too, like from your traditional sports background, like coming in and applying those great things that work and applying it to esports to make it bigger and better. Arda, what do you see happening in the next kind of 10 years in esports? Do you think it's going to be a slow kind of chunk up like we've seen, or do you think we're about to like hit a little bit of a speed strip and start really going?
My personal opinion is that we will continue to grow. I mean, everything that we're seeing in the space is indicative of the scene either continuing to grow or at least staying where it is. But I honestly feel like there's going to be growth in many different areas too. Like 2020 was a challenging year, right? Like at ESPN Esports, we covered a lot of ground. A lot of what we covered this year was the rise of streaming and influencer and celebrity streaming, right? Athletes that couldn't play their sports all of a sudden were looking for different outlets, whether it was just to interact with their fans or to scratch an itch. Like there's a lot of athletes that are legitimate gamers and had already been playing but just couldn't during the season. There were some players that were bringing their rigs with them on the road. Like Myers Leonard is a perfect example. Like he's a gamer through and through, right? And he's somebody that's like I will game no matter what, no matter where. This is part of my identity. I love this very much. And like the first thing he did, and we tweeted this on SportsCenter, when he got to the NBA bubble in Orlando, is he set up his gaming rig. That was the first thing he did. And he took a video of it. Yeah, exactly. Priorities, right? So I just like gaming it's not going away. It's definitely going to grow. It's definitely here to stay. Like I think the idea of, I think there's still a little bit of education to be had among some sectors. I think that there's definitely maybe a little bit of misconception even still today about what is a content creator versus who is an esports competitor. Maybe there's a little bit of confusion there. That's just one example. But definitely by now, if you're not aware, if the brand recognition isn't there, then you're probably living under a rock at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting. I spoke with a local media member today, this morning, about our event tonight. Ashley had spoke with him last night, and I was at the end of the interview. I was asking him, just his take on a couple things, and just what he was seeing. This isn't somebody that regularly covers esports. I think it was his first time covering our team, and he said something that I'm hearing more and more of people that aren't, that don't touch esports on a regular basis. And he said it's becoming harder and harder to ignore, right? It's just becoming more a part of the public consciousness of people that wouldn't, that are just going about their day and are starting to notice esports the same way they're noticing, not just traditional sports, but any entertainment option. And to your point, I think it will just continue to grow and grow. And for us, obviously, like, we've got this philosophy, like, build the fan base one fan at a time. So we're just, we're going to keep chugging along too.
One quick thing, Midnight, I'd love to add on to that is that I have never had more traditional sports contacts. So I have many friends who are working in different sports, right? Like baseball commentators or UFC commentators, MMA commentators, etc. I have never had more traditional sports broadcasters reach out to me and ask how to broach esports. Like they see that as a either viable career option or something that they want to explore. So that, to me, at least from the broadcaster side, is very indicative of how people are viewing the industry right now in 2020.
Yeah, I think that's for sure. I think especially gaming too. I was actually talking about this in an interview recently, how when I was a kid, I would kind of like hide my gaming habits. I mean, I was pretty excessive with it, but and then some of my friends and cousins had like little consoles here and there, but like I was into it, and I didn't really want people to know that, and gamers and those types of kind of like, I guess, fringe hobbies were kind of seen as like, oh, dorky or nerdy, or why are you wasting your time doing that? That's a waste of time. And then they would go watch like 4 hours of reality television. But it's a hobby, and you've seen that kind of go beyond. Like gaming is definitely no longer like oh, you're a nerd. Like the most popular athletes in the world, or their children, grew up playing games at this point, and they're still playing them. To your point about, NBA players and the like, making sure they have their gaming setups when they have to travel, because it is an essential entertainment piece for them. And I think that esports you're going to start to see that as well, because gaming's become more of just a part of everyone's life, in the sense that it's one of their favorite hobbies. They make time for it. I look at esports the same way, that there's that competition base there that, I mean, from the history of like humankind, it feels like competition is the root of just that whole essence of being competitive and winning, right? Everyone wants that. And when you add in like the entertainment side of it with gaming, I just think it's, as far as we are now, as from what I've seen in the last 10 years, as far as we are now, I can't wait to see how much further it grows and grows and grows. So you said you kind of switched your career over to broadcast talent. Where did you start? Did you start on that news station. How did you get involved with the WWE or WWF? I can't remember which one it was at the time, but I was a huge fan of wrestling, actually, especially. I was a weird kid. I was a huge fan of wrestling and video games, so I didn't...
You and I would have gotten along
Yes,
famously.
we would have been
do
good
today.
friends.
Trust me, we have the same interests: video games and combat sports and pro wrestling.
Absolutely.
So I started at that station. I did an open audition after a couple years of volunteering, and they put me on like a talk show. It was like a local Toronto-centric talk show where like the local gardener would come in the summer, or the local accountant would come in, or the band that's traveling through, or stuff like that, you know? Everywhere from like celebrities visiting town to local businesses promoting their stuff, that kind of thing. It was fun. It was like 7 guests a day. I had a blast. That was almost like a meat grinder, just learning everything on the fly, like live interactions and interview skills and things like that. That was fun. Then I transitioned to sports. I did a lot of hockey, a lot of Canadian Hockey League, which is sort of like the amateur feeder system into the NHL. Like the most amount of NHL players come from that league, for example. So like I did a lot of that. Obviously, growing up Canadian, if you don't like hockey, you get deported. So you have to like hockey, and so I still do today. And
Minnesota's the same way.
Oh,
I was gonna
Minnesota's
say
the state of hockey, right? Exactly.
It is a state of hockey, and I feel out of place here because I've never gotten fully into it.
One game, midnight. One game. We're gonna go to one game.
I've
After
always
pandemic,
wanted to go.
We're going.
You know what, Arda, we might have to have you come post-pandemic. There's a couple of us that have been talking about playing in that pond hockey championship.
Let's go. In.
Yeah?
No, say no more. I'm in.
I will be
on
like
team.
I think we're like one player short on the staff here. So
No problem.
I will be there
No
to
problem
make
at all.
sure content is made around that because that sounds
Love it.
amazing.
Love it.
Yeah,
You can be
I think
head
it was
coach,
the
sit
same
on the
weekend
bench.
as launch weekend last year. It actually was that weekend.
Yeah, no way we would have squeezed that in.
So from there, I was always a pro wrestling fan. I grew up loving wrestling. I just love the stories,
Wait,
the
who's
drama,
your favorite?
the
Who's your
athleticism.
favorite? Like in the late '90s, who's your wrestler?
The late 90s, the Attitude Era, I was a Rock guy for sure. Steve Austin, obviously, everybody loved. Like I remember I went to a live event in Hamilton, which is like a city outside of Toronto, and like we wanted to be the first people to buy an Austin 316 shirt, so we just ran to the merchandise table. We got there like 2 hours earlier. We're gonna be the first ones. Let's go. And the doors open. We beeline it to the merchandise stand. Buy an Austin 316 shirt. Yeah, right. Like obviously still too young to drink, so we're not like no Steve Weisers in our hands or anything like that. Like it's we just loved it so much, right? So we'd go to those. And then actually my big break in Canada, so to speak, came where I ended up joining a TV station where they were definitely the third of 3 national sports channels. Like all the other rights, like NHL, NFL, NBA, they were all on the other station. So this was like the little engine that could station. And the biggest property they had was WWE. So one day, the vice president of programming sent out an email. Hey, we're looking for show ideas. If you have anything, let us know. So I literally filled out the one-page form. Hey, sports have post-game shows. Why doesn't WWE have one? Why don't we create a post-game show for WWE? Kind of like The Talking Dead, or like just like a sports post-game show, or anything that you would see after an event. I bet you the wrestling fans would stick around and put it on after Raw and SmackDown. People would stick around to hear what people have to say because wrestling fans are passionate. And so I sent that email off. 20 minutes later, I was in the person's office, and then the show was created, and it's still on the air today. It's been like, I don't know, 10 years, which is unheard of for television, right? So, yeah, which is awesome. So that was it's kind of a cool accomplishment, so to speak, and that's sort of where I like got my national TV exposure in Canada, doing a lot of wrestling, WWE related content, and that's where WWE took notice of me, and then eventually I got a job there.
I love that story because you had to put yourself out there and take a risk and put your idea in front of others, and I don't know, you tell us, but like if you don't hit send on that email, right? If you sort of like, maybe the boss is going to like it, maybe not, you keep that in your pocket. Do you end up what's happened for you since then? Does that happen if you don't hit send on that email?
I feel like I would probably have a much longer road. And honestly, I was there as a volunteer. Like at that time, I was still an intern, so to speak, just volunteering in the radio department. So I happened to be in the building, not being paid necessarily, but still on the company-wide email list. So I don't even know if the radio department was even supposed to receive that email, but it was a company-wide email and I happened to have one. So like all these stars aligned for me to even get that email, to get the one-pager, to have the idea and to know how to execute it. Like, yeah. Right place, right time for sure, but I was definitely like ready for that opportunity when it came,
I think that's what life is really all about. I think it's it's knowing what you want to do and having that itch and just needing to scratch it, and then that opportunity comes. You don't know what that's going to look like. It's hard to predict, but when it comes, you just have to like commit, right? That's a
Yeah.
huge part of it to me. I think that's super cool.
So I got lucky, and then I went to WWE, was there for 2 years, happy it happened. And then after I left, I joined MSG Network, did a lot of hockey there. So Rangers broadcast, Devils broadcast, sorry, Minnesota crowd, but did a lot of New York-centric broadcasts. And that's where I got introduced to esports. So, like, I was a lifelong video game fan like you've been. Like, I played video games religiously. It was my number one pastime. But obviously, it was just, like, fun at the time, right? Like, there wasn't any competition, really. It was just more, I love playing Nintendo, or I love playing PlayStation or Xbox, whatever it is, right? So then I got introduced to League of Legends. So a month before the League of Legends World Championship semifinals were happening, I reached out to ESPN. I saw that they were actually launching a WWE vertical, and I was like, hey, can I contribute to this? I just left WWE. I might be valuable to you. And they said, well, while we talk about that, would you be interested in hosting our digital desk at Madison Square Garden for the League of Legends World Championship? And I was like, sure. I'm not going to say no to
That's
anything, right? Say
wild.
yes to everything. So the problem was I knew zero, and I mean nothing. Never played the game for a second. Didn't know anything about League of Legends. Nada. Zilch. Didn't know who the casters were. Didn't know who the players were. Didn't know who the teams were. Didn't know that there was a competition. Didn't even know League of Legends existed as a game. Did not know. Was not a League of Legends guy whatsoever. Played Warcraft. Played Dota. Not Dota 2, but I knew what Dota was. Did not know what League of Legends was at all. So I had a month, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. So I treated it like a job. 8 to 10 hours a day, learned everything I could leading up to the month. 7 days a week. Just poured every single second of available concentration time into learning League of Legends. Who are the teams? What are the storylines? What should I know going into this? What is the game? The game is very complicated, as we know. Over 100 champions at the time as well. Learn the game, learn the rules. What are the roles, etc.? What are the lanes? All of this. Everything went into that. Treated it like a full-time job. Had like 150 pages of notes, just writing it down because it's easier for me to remember when I'm writing stuff down, right? So I did that all, got myself prepared, talked to my analysts, and it actually came off really, really good. Like those, I'm pretty proud of those because of the amount of effort that it went to put into it. But just imagine, like my first esports event was 2 sold-out days at Madison Square Garden, right?
I remember
like,
when that
never
happened
seen-
too. Like
Yeah.
that was the first time it was there, right?
Yeah, and it's like never seen like this before. The staff at MSG were shocked. They were like, I can't believe that people are here to watch these teams play video games. And the crowd was super into it. It was a scene. And we got one of the greatest, if not the greatest, League of Legends series in history with SK Telecom versus Rocks Tigers. And by the way, my first esports interview was Faker.
No way, dude.
Yeah. Faker comes up to the desk. I'm like, I don't have that like cachet yet because
Yeah.
I don't know this is the Michael Jordan of esports, so to speak, right? So Faker comes, I'm like, hello, sir, how you doing? Like, and like my analysts are like being very deferential and like, you know, showing the proper respect to someone of that stature. And I'm just like chopping it up with Faker through his translator. It was really funny. It
Dude,
was like,
super
hey,
casual.
look, this is my first. Yeah, it's like totally casual, right? Not that I was doing anything wrong. It was just like I was a lot more comfortable, so to speak. So. But yeah, what an experience. And from there, I just caught the bug and I'm like, I need this to be part of my life. And I'm glad that it is.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I love a good origin story. I think it's so cool. I think so many people, I mean, I get so many messages and I wish I could like even read and respond to all of them, but I do get so many messages, whether it's on Twitter, LinkedIn, even my Twitch chat, like, how do I get a career in your sports? What do I do? How do I get in here? What advice would you give to somebody who, you know, maybe they're playing it safe like you were in your early 20s? They got their degree, they're doing their normal job, and it's cool, it's paying the bills, but I want so badly for people to chase their passions. What advice would you give to somebody who's wanting to break into an esports career?
So you had 2 very good points throughout this conversation. Number 1, always have a backup plan. Know that. Know what your backup plan is going to be. Prepare for that. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but definitely have that as a fallback. So like me getting my degree, for example, I thought that was the smartest thing I could do because then at least I had something to fall back on. Once you have that plan in place, I agree with you 100%. If you don't chase it and give it a legitimate shot and setting proper boundaries, if you give yourself a year, if you give yourself a year and a half, whatever you can comfortably give yourself in terms of a timeline, but also giving yourself a fair shot, you will always look back on it and say, I should have done this, I should have done that. as opposed to I didn't make it, but at least I gave it my best chance and I can live with that, right? And not everybody makes it. We know this. It's a very difficult industry to break through, no matter what you're doing in front of the camera. With that said, you got to learn from the people who came before you. What are their successes? What are their failures? Ask a lot of questions to people that have made it. Find those people, ask questions of them, pick their brains, learn from them, learn from their successes and failures, and then try and think of a way to stand out in an already crowded industry, right? Like your personality is making you unique. How do you broadcast that to the masses such that people will remember? At the end of the day, to me, any content creator is selling something. They're selling personality, entertainment, joy. They are selling time spent, right? So like that time is valuable. So what do you do in order to compel people to consume your content over other content that's out there? That's a great starting point, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's an absolutely the right way to look at it. I think it's so important. I wish I can't say I wish I'd done this or I wish I'd done that. I did it the other way. I didn't have a solid backup plan. My back was against the fire, and I just said, listen, like I'd gotten an optic gaming at the time, and I was like, okay, this is something I should definitely like double down on right now, because right now is the time. Like if I go back to school for 2 years or 4 years, and I miss this thing with optic, then I'm going to be sitting back like, damn, I should have done this, right? So I talked to my mom, and I was like living with my mom, paying rent with her, but I was like, she was like, you need to go do the school thing. Like, let's go. And I love that push. It is the right direction. That push is the right direction. But I said, Mom, listen, here's the deal. This is where I'm at. This is what could be. There's no ceiling here. Give me a year, and if it doesn't work out, I will do literally whatever you want. I'll work 30, 40 hours a week, and I'll go to school. I'll do the thing. And I just fully dove in with my back against the fire, just so not wanting to fail. And I don't recommend doing that as someone who put themselves in a position where if I failed, it would have felt like a bigger L than having gone to college and had that great fallback. But it's all about timing, right? I wasn't about to squander this opportunity that was already presenting itself to me. So, but if you don't have that opportunity yet, do the backup plan.
A lot of people don't get that opportunity so early too. I'm not saying that you were lucky. You definitely deserved it. But for people listening out there, that doesn't happen as
rare.
often as you may think.
It's
right?
very rare. Brett, kind of want to throw it to you, a similar question that I asked Arda. I mean, I know you get tons of messages, and we're in job interviews together all the time lately, so we know there's people that want to work here and work in esports, but what advice would you give to someone who's maybe they're not even like an on-screen talent person, but they're just like they're like, yeah, I love esports and I like want to do it. I want to do it. How do I get my foot in the door? How do I get started? What advice would you give if to somebody who's trying to make a career in esports?
Yeah, I think people tend to overlook the small opportunities to get started, right? And Arda, the story you told is a perfect example, right? Where you found a way into the local cable access channel and found a way to do something, and then to do something more, and then do something more, and then when like the opportunity that came about, like that didn't happen by magic, right? Like you had to take several steps very intentionally to get there. And we were interviewing a candidate for a position the other day, and this was a person who had who just graduated college, but for several years while she was in college had worked for the school radio station, and had gotten hands-on production experience and all kinds of things that we interview a lot of people that are coming out of college, and they're like, it never would have occurred to them to do those things early on, or to take those opportunities that might be there, to really get hands-on experience. And that hands-on experience is so incredibly valuable. Like when she was talking about that experience that she had, like I was more impressed by that experience that she was able to have discerned from working for like the college radio station, than I would have been if, I don't even know what the parallel is, but like something that, some like big fancy sounding internship or whatever the case is. And so it's like whatever is directly in front of you, whether it's, working for the college TV station or radio station, or, or volunteering with, with your athletic department or whatever, like whatever's right there in front of you to get hands-on experience, that will ladder up into tangible experience that will pay off when it comes time to be looking for a job.
Yeah, I've definitely always looked at, I mean, that's just kind of how I've even gone through this process, right? Like 10 years ago, I was making fart jokes on a YouTube channel playing Call of Duty, right? And now I'm here on a different YouTube channel, a little bit more buttoned up. And a lot of it is from direct hands on experience, a little bit of networking. I did get lucky a little bit here and there along the way with, oh, I met the right person at the right time, or I was doing the right thing at the right time. But overall, it was that experience that I was able to garner over time that really built into kind of what it is now. So although I do think college is important. I don't want to say that it's not, but I look at the, like Brett said, the tangible life experience, the action item, the initiative you took to do more than, yeah, I got this degree and I showed up on time and I did it. I got the piece of paper. To me, it's so much more valuable to have somebody who's willing to take that initiative and be passionate. So to answer my own question, what I would say to somebody who's wanting to get a career in esports, if you like, it's like it's a passion industry, right? There's so many people who are like, yo, that's so cool. There's more and more avenues nowadays to what that looks like. There's so much stuff on the business, the marketing side, the content side. Content is king in esports. We all know that. Like, there's so much that you can start to do now because there's so many more swim lanes that are at these companies. So it's not about, ooh, I really want to work in esports and because I really love it, they're going to want to hire me. It's, hey, I'm really good at this and I notice you want to do this and I love esports, so let's do this together, right? I think it's about crossing those two things together, the thing you love, which is esports, and whatever it is you're good at, whether it's writing, if it's graphics, if it's creating videos, if it's marketing and understanding how digital marketing works nowadays, especially in the esports community. I think there's just so much value there that people can show themselves.
Yeah, and we've hired people on our staff that were, Raul and Tasha, right? They were both, fans of the team. They were, creating RØKKR graphics just for fun. And they were really impressive. And, it also has to be times when you're looking to hire those types of positions, but like we'd all sort of noticed Raul create cool RØKKR stuff like periodically for a few months. And, then when his resume landed in our laps for a position, we were like, oh yeah, we know that guy. Like, yeah, I was like, yeah, I remember meeting him launch weekend. And yeah, like I remember seeing his graphics and, right place, right time, but also like he had like
done the work
on the radar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Done the work.
I remember.
Concept.
Yeah, it's awesome. He showed up actually to one of the watch parties even, and he was like, "Hey, like I'm this person. I just want to let you know, like I submitted an application." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And like people tell me that a lot, but I was like, "Oh wait, you're the guy with the VHS designs with the RØKKR." And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, dude, yeah." So and then he's turned out to be somebody who is incredibly driven in what he's already good at, what he's doing, which is creating, and then his passion just matches, right? So shout out Raul, much love to the whole team. We've all been grinding here lately. So speaking of lately,
hearing those stories. Those are great stories.
It's
right?
literally
like,
the best.
It just falls into place, and you just feel good for people like Raul. That's awesome.
Yeah. I love it. It's kind of just indicative of the industry that we're in. It is the passion industry. I know there's other industries like it, of course, but just as someone who does feel that, like it feels good, man. But wanted to kind of talk about some recent happenings. I know it's the off season for Call of Duty League, so me and Brett, we've just been sitting here in the off season doing off season stuff. There's so much stuff, a lot of planning.
It has not been a quiet off season.
No, I tried to play it cool, but it has been extremely busy for us here in the off season. We have so many great plans coming soon. But I wanted to kind of get your take, Arda, on this whole Optic Gaming, 100 Thieves, CDL spot. There's an entire like complicated fusion of just news stories and is it true, is it not true? I have no further comment at this time, but I wanted to hear what you had to say.
You mean the person that was with Optic Gaming for the last 10 years and saw it grow and was part of the Green Wall? No comment?
Yeah, I old Optic, not not wanting to speak on New Optic right now, but
Fair enough.
So, and I'll say, and it's funny because Arda asked me if I knew anything the other day, and I was able to say no because, there's a thing called plausible deniability, right? Like,
Right. Sure.
I'm not, I don't want to know when something's done and they want to tell me, like, when there's an announcement ready,
Yeah.
that's what I want to know because
So
I want to be able to ask you, Arda, what do you think of all the speculation that's out there and the rumors that are out there? Because you can talk about it.
Yeah, I will say this. So I made a video on this topic, cheap plug. It is available on our YouTube channel /ESPN Esports, where I talk about what has been reported. And yes, full disclosure, obviously we are chasing the story. Here are two things I can tell you with certainty. I also put this in the video, so this is already out there. Based on our reporting at ESPN Esports. The first thing I'll tell you is that no matter what, I have heard from multiple sources that Hex will be staying with NRG. So this is not a situation where Hex is going to leave NRG and operate a team on his own. No matter what the outcome is, when official announcements are made, if and when official announcements are made, and whatever the decisions are, whether it is Hex getting Optic Gaming back and it's the IP, whether it is 100 Thieves, in fact, assuming the LA slot and renaming it LA Thieves, whatever has been reported out there, and we can confirm, etc. I can tell you that no matter what happens, Hex is slated to stay with NRG. He's currently the co-CEO of NRG along with Andy Miller, and he assumed that role after he had sold Optic Gaming, his shares of Optic Gaming to Immortals Group a couple years ago, and then and left after that to then join NRG. So that's that relationship remains the same. The second thing is that I have heard that I also mentioned in the video was that a lot of teams have not been made aware of the process. So much in line with what Brett is saying there, there aren't a lot of teams being told what is happening right now. A lot of teams are sort of on the sidelines waiting to hear, like everybody else, what is going to happen here. Something is clearly happening. It's like I won't speculate on what I think, etc. I'm only here to talk about what I know, and those are the two things that I know for sure. But based on what's out there, certainly it sounds like teams could change. There could be changes of ownership. There could also be branding changes. Who knows, right? Like there could certainly be a completely different looking landscape in the CDL in Season 2, at least as it pertains to those teams. But yeah, I'm sure there's more to this that we will definitely uncover. And it's certainly been very, very interesting as we've gone along the way. So what you're saying, Brett, though, is that you didn't buy the LA slot. Can I confirm? Let's confirm that. Have the RØKKR broken all rules and now will operate two teams in the CDL in the next season?
We are quite happy with the Minnesota CDL team.
Okay, got it.
And
Just making sure.
Our Rocket League team. We're and we got big plans in the future, but none of them involve the LA CDL team. That slot, I can confirm that.
So we can strike the RØKKR and Wise Ventures as the entity that would have. Okay, good. Just checking.
Yes.
Due diligence.
Can confirm that. It's such an interesting situation to me. I especially look at like how I don't know enough about how it's all like written up in the league rules and what you can and can't do, but like if I'm a player on one of those teams, I'm like, holy F, what is going on, man? Like it's got to be kind of a weird time as far as like who will have the rights to them and how does that really shake out in the off season.
It's a crazy year 1 to 2 transition too. Like just look what happened after the championship weekend, right? Literally 24 hours after the Dallas Empire win their championship, right? It gets announced publicly that the league is going from 5v5 to 4v4. Now, I've spoken with publicly, and you can find the interviews in our archives on Twitch. Like I've spoken with the likes of Crim6 and I've spoken with Clayster and asked them, like, how long did you know about this? Like, this is a monumental announcement that's going to fundamentally change. Essentially, 20% of starting positions are out of the league. So how long had you been talking about this? If the league had announced it 24, the timing of it is very unfortunate optically, right? Like the Dallas Empire didn't have the opportunity to even have a celebratory press conference because they were fielding questions from myself and other members of the media about the fact that the league is shrinking in starting positions, right? you can obviously have the conversation about, whether that's good for the league or not. And many people would say 4v4 is better to watch. Sure. But just like thinking of it from well, we just won a championship, but we definitely can't stay together as we are. Like, that's something that's going to come up in press conferences, right? So both of them said they knew at least a month and a half prior. And both of them said, we thought that one of us would be the one to go for sure. Now, imagine having that in the back of your head as you're competing for a championship while you're not at a LAN in front of thousands of people. You're playing during a pandemic. You're playing online with all of the challenges that poses. I mean, what a month that must have been.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Brett. Go ahead.
No, I'm just, it's hard to disagree with that, Arda. And, I personally would like to see a little bit more time between the end of the season and the start of a free agency period, partly for those reasons. And even, in our case, obviously, it's a lot. It was tough to make the decisions that we made to move on from our roster. And we had a very disappointing end of the season, and obviously, cratered after a promising start, but those are still tough decisions to make. I can't imagine being in the situation that the folks in Dallas were in terms of having to make those decisions immediately following a championship. So I think in a perfect world, you want a little bit of time and space to breathe. And, listen, post-pandemic, if you win a championship, you're supposed to have a parade, right? Like,
yeah.
We win champs this year. Like, we're going to find a way to have a parade in Minnesota.
We're going big.
Yeah. So you want to make sure you have time to drink it in and celebrate a little bit for sure.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that that'll change next year, because I still didn't quite understand why the announcement had to happen at that day. It probably just had to do with how close free agency was to champs. And I even thought, well, kind of building the franchise rosters last year so soon, even after that champs, you're building a roster on a game that's not out. It's tough scenes. But I think overall, and we've talked about it on this podcast a lot, so I won't beat a dead horse, but the change to 4v4 is good. If they can tighten up next year and kind of give that breathing room between champs and when free agency and the training camp vibe starts for the next Call of Duty, I would appreciate that. I think that makes sense. But we've come a long way. I mean, COD used to have champs in April and then still play the rest of a season.
Yeah,
it was wild. It's wild.
The one thing I will say is that covering CDL this entire year, I've seen the complaints, okay? And honestly, whenever there's a patch, even going into champs, right? There was what people saw as an MP5 nerf, the scope changed, the field of vision changed when you were in, in certain mode. So, people were complaining. I mean, obviously, there's always going to be someone that complains about something that happens, right? But you have to give the league credit. I have done this on our Search and Destroy weekly show on ESPN Esports. I've given the league a lot of credit where credit is due, because it's not easy to put on a league like this. And they had to do it with a short amount of time. It's not easy to have to put the broadcast together, to have to think about what's going to happen, what servers go where, etc., what they have to bolster, how will they get everybody involved, what rules will they implement. A lot of this happened on the fly. So for that reason, yeah, was it perfect? No, but would it, is there any scenario where it could have been perfect? Probably not. This was a very, very big undertaking, and the league certainly deserves credit for that. And for those people that are very quick to criticize, especially putting on a league like this during a pandemic, just remember that at the end of the day, champs went off largely without a hitch. There were some concerns at the beginning of champs, sure, but they made adjustments, and at the end of the day, it was solid entertainment for COD fans out there. And overall, with whatever has happened this season and whatever people will think of Modern Warfare and their opinions and whatever the case may be, I will look back at this season and say that was a huge undertaking for the league to do during a pandemic, trying to present online and continue on. And you have to look at that as a measure of success, because it's very difficult. And people will never truly know how difficult it was, not only for the league, but for the teams as well, to have to participate in all of that. I mean, even just yesterday, Midnight, we were talking about how your content strategy had to change on a dime once you realized that everything was going online, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely been a wild year, and I think for as much crap as the CDL and just even Call of Duty as a whole can get, I mean, you have a massively popular, IP in Call of Duty, and the CDL fan bases are growing every day. So there's always going to be those opinions, but I look at the last year of in the first season. Was it ideal? No. Did any of us predict and want a global pandemic? No. For what it was, we got through it. It wasn't pretty. Sometimes it was. It's so as somebody who's like had to put together certain broadcasts to and doing everything remotely and cloud based and all that stuff, it is not easy. So I would even always just get kind of mad when people would talk about the broadcast of CDL and they're messed up the sound, and it's like, do you have any idea how hard it is to do this stuff remotely? And the fact that we were even able to play, I'm just so thankful for it that we could still play online, because otherwise, if imagine we couldn't have played the season online, holy chalked, it would have been bad.
Yeah, and really at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to is we were very fortunate to be able to continue to do what we do in a pandemic when the vast majority, not just traditional sports, but almost every business was fully shuttered in most cases for an extended period of time, and obviously we all had to adapt and roll with the punches. And I mean, I couldn't be more proud of the work that our staff did and how people rallied together and continue to rally. Right? Like, it's not over, right? It's we're still in it. But yeah, Arda, appreciate you saying that, and I 100% agree that that the league and Activision, like everybody there, worked incredibly hard to pull off the pivot and to do what they did. And I have just an enormous amount of respect for the leadership of Johanna Ferries, and her and I actually worked together at the NFL years ago. And it's these funny things when you leave a job and you say like, okay, I hope our paths cross again. A lot of times what you
Guess
find,
what?
your paths cross in ways that you might not have expected.
That is actually so random. Like, you both used to work at the NFL.
There have been times where Johanna and I have been having a very serious conversation about something, and at the end of it, we'll kind of pause and, but yeah, nothing but respect for for her leadership and the work that she did and that the whole staff at Activision and CDL did to help us keep doing our thing.
For what it's worth, too, a little peek behind the curtain. Like, it's not just CDL just walks in the room and points, is like, this is what we're doing. Anytime there's that weird friction or like, they're quite open to feedback and asking the teams their thoughts. I've been a part of many conversations where we're like, hey, like, is this the best way or should we do it this way? Like, what do you like? They really do ask for feedback, and they do. I mean, we've seen them pivot multiple times throughout the season, even based on fan feedback and what they thought, and the just everything how it's gone. They've even made some tight changes for season 2. So I'm really excited for CDL season 2. Arda, you're obviously still going to be covering and doing the whole deal. I'm sure we're going to talk a whole bunch leading into next year and the year after. I really appreciate you coming on. I want to give 2 major shout outs here at the end of the broadcast. Number 1, please vote. Just do it. I really appreciate it if you vote. If you're in a state where early voting's a thing, go do it early. If you want to make a plan and vote on election day, that's what I'm going to do. Do that. Go to gamers.vote to check out where you can vote if you're registered, how to do it in your state, all that great stuff.
Can I, before you close,
Yes.
Ashley, can I tell a funny voting story?
Yes, do it.
So yesterday, we had a CDL, like a league call that I knew was going to be a lengthy call. A lot of slides, and I'm mostly listening. So I figured that's a good thing to do while I stand in line to vote, right? So I go and I'm waiting in line, and it's a little bit of a line. So I got my phone and I'm watching the slides and doing my thing. At some point, I accidentally triggered my video, and so I got a text of people telling me that, like, and I'm in line, mask on, like.
Oh, they could see you, like, front-facing camera?
Yep. Oh yeah. Just like, yep, the camera like this. What I don't know, and maybe someone will tell me after this, is whether I like took over the screen, or if they just saw me as like one little box among 50. But Yeah, so that was my voting story. I voted and multitasked by listening to a CDL conference call and showing my masked face at the same time.
You just wanted to show them that you were voting and masked up and ready to rock. You were flexing. Yeah, I can't stress enough how important it is to vote. I'm really excited. Well, who's excited for this election? My God, no matter what happens, it's going to be wild. But I'm excited to vote. I'm stoked for that. Thank you so much, Arda, for coming on. I'm stoked also for today at 4:30 Central Standard Time at ESPN Esports' Twitch, which we will link down below. We're putting on the Women of the Arena $10,000 tournament presented by Crocs. So shout out to ESPN Esports, shout out to us for helping put it together, and also eFuse Gaming for helping us put this whole thing together. Many women, lady competitors, streamers, content creators, Aerial Powers, professional and WNBA basketball player jumping in. Like, it's gonna be a lit time. I'm excited. I'm actually playing in it, so
I love your strategy too, by the
thank
way.
you. It's a solid strategy, honestly. Like, get it Amanda the Jedi's lobbies and just have good vibes, and that's probably how we just want to place at least top 3. If I make some money off it, I'll be hype. So I'll have my Crocs in sport mode. I'll be stoked. So that's happening tonight at 4:30 Central on the ESPN Esports Twitch. I'll also be obviously streaming my POV on my Twitch, Midnight MN, and then we'll be putting a lot of clips and stuff on Twitter. So anyway, if you're listening after the fact and you're like, well, this day is already past midnight, I'm just a listener, I appreciate you listening. Thank you so much. Leave a rating, subscribe on whatever podcasting platform you're listening on, and if you're watching this video, hello. Thank you for watching. And I guess